Hi, I'm Joel McConvey, and this is the Biometric Update podcast. Originally, I was going to talk to today's guest, Valentin Vasilyev of Fingerprint, about age assurance. But things change so quickly these days that our talk got taken over by agentic AI, the fingerprint model context protocol, and how not to cook a steak. Welcome, Valentin, to the Biometric Update podcast. We're here sort of ostensibly today to talk about Reddit, but I think we can also discuss identity in general. We're at a pivotal point in identity. We have age assurance laws happening. We have the agentic universe expanding. And there's a lot going on, and you have a unique perspective on it. So to start, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Fingerprint?
Hi, Joel. Thanks for having me on the podcast. So I'm Valentin, co-founder and CTO of Fingerprint. I've been in the fraud detection, fraud prevention industry for more than a decade. Originally started working in this industry by creating an open source project called Fingerprint.js in 2012, which was used by a lot of businesses. And then in 2020, my co-founder Dan and we turned the open source project into a commercial model and started building the company. So we are based out of Chicago, but we are fully remote and work on browser identification, fraud prevention, and customer lifetime value optimization through seamless experiences in the web.
So browser fingerprinting is sort of, your specialty, if you will. And it's sort of a bit different from some of the other stuff we cover. It doesn't rely on biometrics or ID. And I think of it almost as more of an ambient method. Can you explain browser fingerprinting to those who may not be familiar with it and how the whole system works?
Yeah, absolutely. Browser fingerprinting is this idea that modern browsers are so complex. They're almost like mini OSs, operating systems. They expose so much information that can be used potentially to identify devices that you can combine that information to have enough identification accuracy to uniquely identify browsers and mobile devices. So you would take things like screen resolution, fonts, the size of your dock, maybe in macOS, and other things that are unique to your browser or your environment. These are things that, if taken alone, don't mean much. But when you combine enough signals together and use a clever algorithm on top or a clever data science on top, you can actually derive an artificial identifier called browser fingerprint that can uniquely identify a browser. Even though there are billions of browsers and billions of mobile devices, by adding enough entropy, and by entropy I mean identification information that aids in identifying devices, the identifier becomes so unique that it's possible to use it for to uniquely identify browsers like during account creation, during signups, during password resets. For example, to confirm a password reset is done by the same browser who created the account, right? So it's important, like an important use case for fingerprint. So this is in a nutshell what fingerprinting does. And it's primarily used by Fingerprint to perform fraud detection, but also to optimize the experience of users and to make the transactions happen faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any behavioral element to it? Like when you're collecting signals, so to speak, from the browser, are you looking at how the user sort of interacts with it, or is it more like passive signals? You mentioned font, screen size, and this sort of thing.
The original fingerprinting idea does not include behavioral analytics. Behavioral analytics is kind of adjacent but separate from fingerprinting. Fingerprinting likes to think about signals as capturing a snapshot of your environment and generating an identifier based on the snapshot attributes. And behavioral analytics usually involves listening to events coming from the user, such as mouse clicks, mouse movements, keyboards, maybe tilting your screen on a mobile device. So these are more like events that are streaming kind of and not instantaneous like fingerprinting is. But they can be useful in its own right, but they are separate. And with fingerprinting, you capture a snapshot of the browser attributes, process them through data science, and get back an identifier. With behavioral analytics, it's more like you collect events for some time, and then you also do some kind of like machine learning model on top to understand, is this the same device that opened the account, for example. The use cases are actually very, very similar, but how they approach solving that is different. And there are pros and cons with each method. With fingerprinting, there are like strengths such as instantaneous response. It's very friendly to new identification. So if the device had never been seen before, fingerprinting can still accurately identify the device as a new device that didn't create an account before. With behavioral, it requires kind of a warm account where prior behavioral stream of events had already been collected, and then it kind of compares the current stream of event with the previous stream of events and compares both signatures kind of. So it requires kind of a pre-warmed account or pre-warmed interaction. So these are kind of the differences between the two.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for explaining that. So given that, it's not really then identity verification that you're doing, and it's not really, to segue into Reddit, um, not really what they're looking for at this point. Reddit is looking for sort of proof of human in response to this massive influx of agentic AI or AI agents. So maybe we can talk a bit about Reddit. What's your take on their approach and how they're sort of going about this problem of figuring out who's real on the platform?
It's a very tricky problem to solve, and I understand AI is now like gobbling up information, and there is so much interaction, so many interactions done by AI. Definitely a tricky problem to solve. Proving humanness. Originally, the Capture project was created for that, which is like I don't remember the acronym. It's like a Turing test, essentially, or something like that. You click on certain images, and then the Capture would capture the behavioral analytics, by the way, like how you move your mouse when clicking on like traffic lights, and also potentially if you correctly clicked on the right images. But I think the primary way how captchas worked in the past is the behavioral analytics baked into them. So I think that project was originally designed to separate humans from machines, but now actually machines solve it much better. Like the accuracy of humans is like in the 80s%, like 85%, and for bots it's like in the 90s. So definitely, if I have a sophisticated special bot that was trained to solve captchas, it can do it much better than a regular human. Now, with like modern kind of landscape, all businesses want to streamline user experience and provide like a zero friction experience for everyone. But fraudsters exploit every opportunity when they see a zero friction experience, because what to one is like super nice experience, to the other is an excellent opportunity to exploit and penetrate and do damage. So definitely, I think this human verification is very important. But I would like to maybe take a step back, because I believe agentic interactions will grow very quickly in the next couple of years. Regular consumers will stop interfacing with the internet in the same way they used to, like clicking links, opening browser tabs, scrolling, comparing pages, looking at multiple tabs at the same time to like compile information or build a mental model of like a report of ticket prices, things like that. I think those things will go away, and humans will increasingly interact with AI assistants with agentic capabilities more, and they will perform those activities on behalf of the users. So the internet right now is like 45-50% bot traffic. I think in a few years it'll be like 70 to 90% bot traffic, and this is a really like important direction where we're all moving. So I think distinguishing humans from bots is not as important as detecting legitimate agents from non-legitimate ones. Those who were authorized by humans to perform tasks on behalf of them, who have the permission to act on behalf of the owners or the owners of the account, even though it's automated traffic, and those who don't have the permission. So legitimacy check and intent check and identity chain check. These would be the three pillars of how websites and merchants in e-commerce setting will verify the interactions, not whether it's a human or a bot, because this notion, I think, is dead already. Like, we don't need to know if it's a human or a bot. We need to know what kind of bot it is, whether it's legitimate and what it's trying to do, and whether it was pre-authorized by a human, by the owner of the account to complete the task.
I was speaking to a gentleman the other day who runs a blockchain-based firm, and he was suggesting that not too it won't be too long before we wake up and say to our AI assistant, "I feel like a steak tonight," and then it'll check our fridge and say, "Oh, you don't have steak," so then it'll talk to the budget AI agent. Are we actually going down that road? Are we going to get to a point where everyday interactions are suffused with AI?
I believe so, yes. AI will be acting as aggregator of all providers of your life. Right now, it's digital providers of your life, and it's happening already through the MCP protocol, where I can use my AI assistant to connect multiple tools and then use those tools and orchestrate complex workflows through natural language prompts. I can first ask for information, then I can pass that information to a different tool that is also connected to my assistant, and then like using the steak example, I can ask what kind of steaks are available, and then it would go to HEB and order maybe a steak, and then I would ask my air fryer or whatever to connect through the MCP protocol to the AI tool and cook that steak for me, and then I'll just go downstairs and eat my steak because my AI assistant already prepared. It's not a distant future, I think. It's actually going to happen very soon because MCP enabling your kitchen appliances is going to be the next steps. Like 3 years ago, very few came with Wi-Fi. Now every single one comes with Wi-Fi. What's preventing my washing machine to have an MCP connector to my AI tool? Nothing. You just add a little chip, like a little TPU, a little bit of inference, and it works. So I think AI tools will become the centers of the digital and later physical universe for every human and how we interact with the world.
I got to say, I don't think you should cook a steak with an air fryer. But that having been said,
I'm not a cook. I don't know how to cook. My wife is a cook, so but that's.
But yeah, point taken. And that's a good segue. Maybe you can tell me a bit about the Fingerprint MCP server. I know that's some of the latest news. You're talking about the MCP enabling sort of devices to interact and agents to interact. So tell me about this project and how Fingerprint is rolling it out.
Yeah, so MCP is a model context protocol, essentially a way to connect AI tools to third-party providers. Mm-hmm. And we do that to feed the data to AI tools, to provide documentation and provide different skills, we call them, which is like essentially detailed descriptions of how a certain complex operation should be done. So an MCP server is a wrapper around everything your tool supports in an AI-friendly format. So you can use an MCP-enabled tool and connect it into your AI assistant. Let's say you're using a ticket website such as Booking.com. Usually, you would probably open Booking.com, compare prices, maybe buy a hotel, maybe buy a ticket to an event, etc., etc. But now, if Booking offers the MCP server, I can connect the MCP server to my AI assistant, Claude in my case, and then I can ask Claude directly, "Hey, can you book a couple of tickets for tomorrow?" And then it will go ahead and do that through the MCP connector directly into Booking. So this is how you connect websites, applications, services you regularly use into your favorite AI assistant. So now, how does Fingerprint use the MCP protocol? Fingerprint is a data provider. We work in the device intelligence space. The way we work is we give our customers a client-side library that they place on their website or in their mobile app to protect or streamline experience in critical transaction steps, such as account creation, logins, password resets, cryptocurrency transactions, etc. Whenever a critical transaction happens, Fingerprint captures a snapshot of the device intent through smart signals, uniquely identifies that device, and provides that information to the customer as a webhook or as an API. And it stores that information too. Without MCP, a fraud analyst would have to look and sift through millions of records potentially to understand fraud patterns, risks, anything suspicious happening today. It's a time-consuming data analysis that requires a lot of data science and data analytics skills to efficiently process all these millions of rows. Fingerprint offers that capability, but it's not fast to process all this information. With MCP, you can connect Fingerprint directly into your AI assistant, such as Anthropic Claude, and then you can ask natural language questions like, have you seen anything suspicious today? If yes, show me the top 5, 10 signups or top suspicious cryptocurrency transactions or withdrawals, things like that, from the device intelligence perspective. And Cloud knows that Fingerprint is a device intelligence provider. It has a very detailed schema explaining all the operations that are supported by Fingerprint. So it will issue in the background a few server-side API calls in parallel, pull the latest events, analyze them, highlight the suspicious ones. So it actually reduces the time it takes to analyze the data, like by 2 orders of magnitude for a fraud analyst. Whereas before, a fraud analyst would take maybe days, maybe weeks to analyze a complex like anomaly. Now with AI, you can pull the information and interpret it like instantly because latest models have a huge context that you can feed all these rows, and you can use like filtering, all that stuff. And then you pipe that information into Cloud and it will answer your questions instantly. So that's why we created MCP. And in addition to that, like I mentioned, it helps you onboard. It has a detailed skill of how to set up your account if you're a first-time Fingerprint user, and it can manage your environment. It can create API keys, it can create environments, not only like reading data, it's actually like an account management tool for you. And this gives it especially like a lot more flexibility because you connect external tools to your AI assistant, such as CRM or your case management system, and you can analyze the data with Fingerprint. Then you can create an API key and connect Fingerprint with your CRM system and have them talk to each other using AI Assistant as a conduit between the two. So it's very flexible from this perspective.
Wonderful. Very cool. Last question before we sign off, sort of play devil's advocate. I know, with every technology that tries to, give people identify anything really about anybody or looks at data at all, you have privacy concerns. People that say, well, you're collecting data, you're monitoring things. So tell me a bit about Fingerprint on the privacy side. How does it work to protect user data?
Yes. First of all, I want to say Fingerprint is very serious about user data protection, and we follow the data privacy regulation framework such as GDPR, CCPA, and the respective ones, like in India, where we also operate, and other European countries. Mm-hmm. So to understand how this works, it all depends on the use case that the website has. If the use case requires a fraud detection step as a mandatory step in like the account opening process, like for example, if you're opening a bank account, I think there should be a security step verifying you're not running like a fake device or you're actually a legitimate user. That mandatory security step is essential for account creation. So in those cases, fingerprinting can run without any prompts or consent dialogues for the user, for the consumer, because it's a required step. For non-essential use cases such as marketing, streamlining the experience, the data controller if I use the GDPR language, data controller needs to obtain a user consent and notify them, hey, we're using fingerprinting to streamline your experience, and explain exactly how it's done. Like not only cookies, but fingerprinting too. And if the user says no, fingerprinting shouldn't be run. So the data controller, a website in this case, should disable or not call fingerprint, because fingerprint is not called automatically, it's called on demand when the data controller actually instructs it to run. So if it's essential, like account opening, then they can run fingerprinting. If it's an non-essential use case, then they should ask for the permission. So in terms of privacy, I think Fingerprint is actually a privacy-friendly technology because it doesn't collect any information that represents personally identifiable information. It doesn't need emails, doesn't need your home address, doesn't need any financial information. Even the IP address is optional. You can disable IP address collection. No other fraud prevention technologies actually are zero PII, and fingerprinting is. So from that perspective, I think it's great. So it depends on the use case, and from the privacy perspective, yes, websites should respect users' consent and not do fingerprinting when users don't want to. And that solves this from a regulatory perspective, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That brings me to the end of my questions, and I really appreciate your insights today. It's been awesome to chat. So thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Valentin Vasilyev of Fingerprint for joining me today. And thanks to you for listening. You can learn more about Fingerprint at fingerprint.com. And be sure to follow all the latest news in biometrics and identity at www.biometricupdate.com.